Morning, Dan and Amy coming to you live from Big Monster Toys in Chicago's West Loop, part of our AM 560 Signature Bank Business Tour. And we're about to do a risky segment here, Amy.
What?
We're about to take on Don Lemon because we're going to talk about Susan Rice and her interview with Andrea Mitchell yesterday and the Bloomberg report the day earlier suggesting perhaps that she was engaged in using the surveillance state to monitor political opponents, which would be Watergate era stuff. But the reason that I'm a little jumpy about this is because
we've been warned not to don't discuss this.
Don Lemon. I mean, I certainly don't take his admonitions lightly.
So let us be very clear about this. There is no evidence whatsoever that the Trump team surveilled or was spied on illegally. There is no evidence that backs up the president's original claim. And on this program tonight, we will not insult your intelligence by pretending otherwise, nor will we aid and abet the people who are trying to misinform you, the American people, by creating a diversion. Not going to do it.
I love aiding and abetting. Not going to do it, Dan.
There's other people who don't want to insult our intelligence either, like Chris Matthews over at MSNBC, who gets the real reason we're getting after Susan Rice. People like you, Amy, getting after Susan Rice.
They're looking for a pinata. Yeah. They found one in Susan Rice. I do think.
Notice it's always a female.
That's also true.
Yep. Everybody agrees. Yep. I didn't get a harumph from that guy. Harumph. David Corn with a harumph and an addition.
When Rand Paul gets out there and says she's abused this right, there is not an iota of evidence that she's abused anything. Calling her typhoid Mary, all we know now is that she did her job. Did she do something wrong? There is no information indicating that. So they are making her, basically they're defaming her without any reason to do so. Because she's a woman, maybe because she's a black woman, maybe because they didn't like her during Benghazi.
Well, there it is.
Yeah, that's it.
All right.
African-American female, that's why the right is all over her.
We're racist, sexist, and we're insulting your intelligence, but we're going to need some help. So we're turning now to former federal prosecutor and National Review online columnist, National Review, contributing editor, actually. He is Andy McCarthy. He joins us now. Andy, thanks for being with us. Appreciate it.
Dan, Amy, how are you?
Good. Thanks for being with us. So you penned a piece on this that also runs counter to what Don Lemon is saying, and I know that's uncomfortable territory for you, where you suggest that the information that has been unearthed about Susan Rice and her activities is Watergate-era activity, at least questions, and the answers are at kind of a Watergate level in terms of the importance. Make your case.
Well, look, I think they're banking on the general ignorance of people about how intelligence works, which is, I don't mean ignorance in a pejorative way. People are just uninformed about this. But, basically what Rice did here, so far what we understand that she did, and as I understand it, she is conceding that she unmasked identities. And her claim is what good defense lawyers usually do. They basically mounted defense on the basis of things that nobody is claiming happened. So she's saying that the collection of intelligence that was involved here, from which the unmasking was done, was completely legal. Nobody's saying it wasn't. And she's saying that she did not leak anything, which is not the claim against her. What she did was unmask the identities of Americans who are usually kept concealed in intelligence reporting. And these were Americans, evidently, who were all just happened to be connected to the Trump campaign or the Trump transition. And what I think people don't appreciate, because we talk about the intelligence community as if it was one big undifferentiated whole, is that we're talking about 17 different agencies, only 3 of which are really the investigative, analytical, collecting agencies. That's the FBI, the CIA, and the NSA. They're the ones that go out and get the intelligence, and it's their job to determine whether the identities of Americans should be masked or concealed when they refine the raw intelligence into the reports that they send throughout the rest of the intelligence community, or if the identities need to be revealed in the reporting because the identity of the American is essential to understanding the intelligence value of whatever communications or other intelligence collection that they're talking about. So it virtually never happens that people in the agencies that are consumers as opposed to collectors of intelligence ask for information to be unmasked by the agencies that collected it. And I would suggest to you, you interview a lot of people on Capitol Hill, you interview a lot of people who are attached in some way or another to the intelligence field. You ought to ask them, have you ever asked the FBI, the CIA, or the NSA to unmask the identity of someone who came up in intelligence reporting because you couldn't understand the intelligence value without that piece of information? I think to a person, you would find that many people, if they've done it at all after years of experience, they've done it maybe once. But for the most part, the answer is probably going to be no.
Now, did you watch her interview yesterday with Andrea Mitchell? I mean, she seemed a little uncomfortable, like she wanted to get off the set as soon as possible, but she didn't seem to really deny unmasking, but she said the unmasking wasn't political in nature. Do you believe her?
Well, I don't think she rates being believed on anything she says just on the basis of past performance. So, I think anything she says has to be corroborated by something else, which is the way you usually approach somebody who has credibility problems. So, we'll just have to see. But here's what I would say, that if some of the allegations, I know she denied the business about the spreadsheet, but if some of the allegations that have been reported turn out to be true, and I haven't got a way, I don't have access to the intelligence information, so I can't say. But, Amy, if you incidentally intercept the same people again and again and again, and it just happens to be the same group of people, that starts to sound not so incidental. And what you have the framework here of is potentially a big scheme that involves really three parts. There's people at the top of the chain, like Rice, who have access to the raw intelligence and the intelligence reporting and the ability to request, I put that in quotes, the FBI or the other agencies to unmask identities. When I say I put that in quotes, let's remember that Susan Rice is Obama's right hand, right, during this. So if she calls up and says, would you please unmask this person, if you're at the FBI or the CIA, if you say no, you're saying no to the president, essentially. And, the fact is that if it's a matter that's outside normal authority, the sergeant can always tell the general no, but also have to live with the consequences of that. So I'm not so sure these were requests for unmasking, and obviously they were complied with, which is why we have a scandal. But then in phase two, you have Obama issuing this extraordinary executive order which spread raw intelligence and unmasked identities broadly throughout the intelligence community, which exponentially increased the chance that there would be leaking. And then finally, based on what we heard from Evelyn Farkas at MSNBC a few days back, you had people outside the administration who had been inside, like Farkas was a former Obama official who was in the Clinton campaign when a lot of this was going on, who say they were pressuring people in Congress to push the intelligence communities to disclose more and more information about Trump and Russia and Trump and whatever. So if you get that information pushed to Capitol Hill, you have even more increased likelihood of leaking. And then you have to compare that to the fact that there was an awful lot of leaking.
Well, it seems to me the point that Rand Paul and other senators have made about the need for Susan Rice to be whistled before Congress to answer some questions under oath would include helping to narrow the scope of the investigation into who that leaker was, if it of Michael Flynn's name, if it wasn't her. That's number one. Number two, to reconcile conflicting statements, it seems, on the matter of unmasking, because 2 weeks before her interview yesterday with Judy Woodruff on PBS, she essentially feigned surprise. I mean, it appears to be feigning at this point. Say, I was surprised to learn of this unmasking business. I learned it from the New York Times. And she seemed, as you said, to essentially, without explicitly saying, be conceding the point that she was in the business of unmasking names, particularly in the waning days of the Obama administration, but this was just all, customary in the course of doing her job.
Yeah, well, look, as a former prosecutor and a long time one, I've always found it quite remarkable that witness comes in on day, absolutely no idea what you're talking about, and then witness comes in on day 2 and has an exacting knowledge of what you were talking about, the very thing that was denied the day before. So, again, given Rice's track record, that's not something I'd be terribly surprised by. And I think what really the committee needs to do, the committee under Chairman Nunes, what really essentially needs to be done is they need to scrub the documents before they talk to her and find out, was this a situation where there were 1 or 2 instances of unmasking, or was it a pattern of behavior where the same people were involved again and again, and did they do things like spreadsheets, which starts to make it look like it's not incidental collection, but that they were actually targeting their political opposition? But if I were the committee, I'd want to have a mastery of the documents before I had her in to speak, because I wouldn't take anything she said at face value. I'd want to have a document to back it up one way or the other.
To be able to rebut or challenge, right? He is Andrew McCarthy, former Chief Assistant U.S. Attorney and now contributing editor at National Review, nationalreview.com. Andy, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.